Yo, what's good, guys? Inswain with Inswain Audio. Welcome back. If you're new here, man, where have you been? Make sure to subscribe. We missed you. Anyways, today I figured I would do a little video. People ask me questions a lot, little frequently asked questions. I'm here to answer them. So I didn't open these up to you guys on Instagram or anything. Make sure to follow me there. But these are just questions that I've gotten a lot. So they're not by any one specific person. They're just questions I get asked a lot. And I figured I'd kind of answer them all here in one video because it can be useful to you because you may have these questions. But yeah, anyways, let's jump into it. All right, a question that I get asked a lot, I see a lot, it's a very hot topic. I've addressed it a little bit on this channel already, but that is, should you compress or EQ first? And usually they're talking in terms of vocals, but this can apply to anything. And the answer is always the same. Both. It depends, whatever you want. So what I mean by this is there is no rule. It's not like you should always compress first or you should always EQ first or that one is necessarily better than the other. It's just a different way of going about things, right? It's preference. It's what you're trying to achieve. They have a slightly different effect. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. I don't always compress first. I don't always EQ first. It depends on what the source is and what I'm trying to get to. There is no hard rule here. Really with anything, but especially with this. What I'll say to break it down real quick is if you EQ first, you're EQing a more dynamic signal and then compressing that down and kind of, reverting the changes slightly. That's if you EQ first. If you compress first, you are making the signal less dynamic and then EQing that less dynamic, more solidified signal. So that's kind of what's happening in a nutshell with the one way versus the other. So do with that what you will and, experiment around and whichever one of those you want to do for that case, do it. One question I get asked a lot is, what is the difference between mixing and mastering? And if you're here, you probably know that, or at least you have an idea, but you'd be surprised how many people come to me for mixing and or mastering and don't know what the difference is. They'll send me a song that's already mixed and want me to master it, and they think I can tune the vocal or add reverb to the vocal. Or they'll say, hey, I need mastering. We'll agree, we'll say the master, and then the song's not mixed yet. So some people think mastering is like, I recorded a song, make it sound good, right? Which would be mixing and mastering. So what is the difference between mixing and mastering? Mixing is taking the individual elements of the song, the individual tracks, each instrument, vocal, everything, right? The guitar, the bass guitar, the snare drum, the synth, whatever is in your song, the hi-hat, the vocal, the harmonies, the lead vocal, right? It's taking all of those, mixing them, so processing them individually, balancing the levels, panning, there's a million things we do with mixing, but it's taking each individual element, mixing it down to one stereo audio file, which is your final mix. Now, there's a million ways to get there, and that's like asking an artist, what should a painting look like, right? But a painting is a painting, a mix is a mix. There's a million different ways you can go about it, but the final product is a stereo file that's mixed. It could be Atmos, but that's another topic. It's a stereo file for sake of simplicity here in the conversation. That is the final mix. Then after that in the chain of events here is then mastering. Mastering is taking that one stereo mix audio file and processing that further to optimize the sonics, the balance, the tonality of the frequencies, the dynamics, etc., right? I can't get into a whole lesson of how to master a song here in this quick little frequently asked questions, but that's the difference between mixing and mastering. And mixing comes first. It just has to, like the way things work. You couldn't master a song first. Typically, they're done by different people, although there are people like me that do the mixing and the mastering, or one or the other. One thing I get asked a lot by other mix engineers learning, or even the clients that I'm mixing for, is how loud should the vocals be? And like everything, the answer is, how loud do you want them? Right? It's all subjective. Now, I know that's boring, cliche, and not helpful, but it's the honest truth. There are some songs where the vocal is very loud. There's some songs where the vocal is very quiet. Now I'll get into the nuanced details of, kind of the subjectivity here and where your taste will come in. Some things that'll determine that are, first and foremost, the genre. Some genres, the vocals, the loudest thing, front, center, right, pop, modern hip hop. Other genres, the vocal sits kind of back further. I like to think about like punk rock a lot, like old punk, like the vocal, like you can't even understand what they're saying sometimes, or old rock songs, and that kind of gives to the feel of it, right? So it all depends on the genre, the song, what you want to go for, your artistic taste, the specific artist. But I would say one thing that I've heard, and you've probably heard this, it's tossed around a lot, is a good like rule of thumb, if you don't really know where to go, is balance the vocal to be equally as loud as the snare / clap. That's like a good rule of thumb. If you have no idea where to go and you don't have any direction, there's a starting point for you. Another question that I get asked a lot, mostly by my clients, but stick around because there's going to be some insight here for you, is do you mix, XYZ genre? And the answer is yes. I've worked on a lot of songs. I've worked on genres that I've never even heard of. So I've worked on everything. But the point that I bring this up is because when people ask this, I'm not sure that they realize that a mix engineer who knows what they're doing can mix any genre. It's not a different job or a different process. You might use different tools to get to the end result, and the end result might be very different depending on genre, but the same thing is true for two different songs within the same genre, right? The only difference here is the instruments that we might see. But even that, right, there's guitars in multiple genres. Like there's guitars in trap music, there's guitars in rock music. But the main difference is kind of the standard or with the expectations of the genre, right? Like if you have this genre A, the guitars might be mixed much more wet and loud than genre B, right? So there's these standards or expectations for the genres. Now, obviously you can break them, but for simplicity's sake, let's just say we're following them. Really what you want to know is, does the engineer understand those standards of the genre? And if they don't, can they listen to a few references and get it? If you give a good mix engineer a genre that you just created or they've never heard and you give them a few references, they can mix that genre, right? Can a chef make two different dishes? Of course. They might have not ever made this one before, but they know how to follow a recipe, or they can look at a reference, right, of a meal and be like, okay, I need to do this. They're a chef. They cook food. They might specialize in certain things or work with certain types of dishes more, but they can cook anything. And it's the same thing with a mix engineer. So yes, I and other skilled mix engineers, we can mix any genre. How familiar are they with the genre is a case-by-case basis, but if you give them references, they can do it. At least they should. That's their job. Another question I get asked a lot, and this one's by clients, but once again, stick around. There's some insight here, is can you make my song better? And they'll send me a raw recording or a rough mix or anything. And this question is so packed, but also so straightforward. The answer is yes, but, right? Like, of course I can. That's my job. I'm a mix engineer. But better is subjective. So what I see from your song and would make it as quote unquote better, you might not think it's better. Or somebody else would say, yeah, I can make it better. And they would do something that I don't think is better or that is better than me or not, right? So it's all subjective. So if you are going to a mix engineer, or if you are a mix engineer and someone's asking you, can you make my song better, right? How do we answer that question? Like, of course, I think I can make it better. A question I get asked a lot is, how long have I been mixing? It's hard to answer. I don't remember exactly when I started. I know I've been doing it professionally since 2019. 5 years now. Wow. But I was kind of dabbling, mixing my own vocals for 2-3 years before that, maybe throwing effects on it, not really knowing what I was doing. So I would say like officially since 2019, but a little bit longer than that. Another thing people ask a lot is, how long does it take to learn to mix? Similar question. And the answer is, if you can put files in a DAW and turn the volume up and down, you're mixing, right? But is it good? And what people really mean is, how long does it take to get good at mixing? And once again, some people, they can do it in a year. Some people never get good. It's just like anything. It just depends on your taste and really how bad do you want it, how hard are you going to work, how much are you going to spend time learning, studying, etc. So once again, not a useful answer, but to give you like an actual number isn't impossible. But I would say if you really put your head to it, you could get pretty good in just a few years. It's really it's not magic, guys. It's like anything else. Like if you put the work in, you're going to get the results. Question I get asked a lot by other mix engineers in my lessons, etc., or just engineers I know, is, what plugin or plugins should I buy? And the answer depends on where you're at and what you need, but generally, like, my blanket answer is probably none. Like, for one, save your money. Like, I'm not someone that like It's like, oh, buy this, go check this out. Like, yeah, I like cool stuff. I have a lot of plugins. I have tens of thousands of dollars worth of plugins myself, but I can mix a song with stock. Just yesterday, I had to make a template for someone, a custom template, and I could only use stock Logic plugins because they use Logic. And no problem. It's nice to have my tools. I have preferences, but you don't need plugins. If your DAW has an EQ, you don't need an EQ. If it has a compressor, like all DAWs have EQs and compressors. In Logic specifically, I can speak from experience. The only thing we were really missing, we had distortion, but we didn't have like a designated saturation plugin. Latest update, we got one. So if you use Logic, I can speak from experience. You don't need anything. You have everything you need in some great ones and some ones that I still use to this day. I still use the Logic compressor. I still use the Logic flanger. I love the Logic flanger, just for some examples. So you don't need plugins. But another answer is if you're further along and you find yourself limited with the reverbs you have in your DAW, and it's stunting your creativity, it's fine to buy things to level you up, right? Like, if it's going to make your work faster, make you more money, make your music better, and it's worth the investment for you with where you're at, then it's okay to buy plugins. And this works for physical gear as well. But the answer is always going to be no if the question is this going to, fix my song? Like, if you're just buying things because you think that's what's going to improve your music, the answer is no. You'll know when you are being stunted by missing something. That's when you get something. If you're just searching for a solution blindly and you think, oh, if I buy this preamp, my song's going to be better. No, it's not that. You have to just make better music. And I'm talking to myself too, so don't take offense. And one of the most infamous questions that I get, everyone's asked, I've asked, I think I might still ask it to this day, is how loud should my song be? And boy, could that be a whole 3-hour video movie series. I could do a whole course on this. There's so much information out there, and it's not like I'm providing any new information here, but the answer is whatever feels and sounds good. Once again, that's a useless answer, but for real, that's the truth. Some genres, once again, have, ranges that sound good, that feel good. Some like to be more dynamic. But really, what I'm getting at here is don't get so caught up in what WUF should it be, this streaming platform, this, that. And this isn't my original idea. I've heard it from somebody, and it just rung true to me, is that -14 for Spotify. Like, don't master your song just for Spotify for a number that's arbitrary that they could change tomorrow. They could change their target to -12 and then your song's off, or all that. Like, and plus the -14 doesn't even mean that if your song's louder than, like, it's such a nuanced question. But just to sum it up, trust me, just master your song in your DAW until it feels as good as it can, where it's as loud as it can be, but it's not crushed and there's still dynamics and it's not too quiet. Just get it to where the energy feels right. That's all you should be considering, is does the energy feel right for this song? If it's not enough energy, make it a little louder. If it's too much and it's squashed, pull it back. As long as in your DAW, the energy and the loudness of the song feels right, there's your master. That's what you're sending off to every streaming platform and CD and vinyl for forever, because they're always going to be able to retroactively change it and everything. And you don't want to master your song 37,000 times for each streaming platform. It's not even possible. Make it sound good and feel good in your DAW. And you can look at meters to give you information, especially when you're learning, but don't let them make changes. If your song says -12 and then the next one says -7, but they both feel good, then you're mastering one at -12 and one at -7. Use the meters to learn and to make sure you're in the right ballpark. Like, you don't want to be super, super loud or super, super quiet, but if it feels good, it is good. And that is the best advice you could get for loudness. And I'm sure every mix and mastering engineer that knows even anything would agree with me, is just make it feel and sound good and don't get so caught up in the numbers, because it means nothing at the end of the day. All right, guys, hope you got something from that. Those are some questions that I get asked a lot. If you have questions or you want to know something, leave them below. Maybe I'll start compiling them and make a part 2. If not, I'm sure I'll be making a part 2 eventually. Anyways, I think this one's gotten a little bit long now, but there's just so much I could say. I could sit here and talk forever, but you got to go. I got to go. We got mixing to do, guys. Good luck out there. Inswain with Inswain Audio. Peace.